People watch movies where detectives go in, they have CSI, you have your hair sample, you have your DNA, you have this and that, and deep in science involved sometimes with all that. The real crime, more than 90% on the planet, gets investigated and closed by bad guys saying, I did it. I became really, really good at where the person gets arrested, a uniformed officers, they try, and then there was a protocol. If there's a certain level of crime, then they can call people like me. And I would walk in and I would then get them to say, this is why I did it, this is how I did it, and I did it.
Sunil Tulsiani is a police officer turned business mogul. He's referred to as the wealthy detective. A bulk of this conversation was about his life as a police officer, as a detective, fighting crime, understanding the world of crime, and understanding the world of human beings. The end of the podcast is about how he used those skills in order to actually build his wealth. But trust me, it's this character building phase that was the most interesting for me when it came to his human journey. You guys are not ready for how intense this podcast gets. So if you're one of those people who enjoys those gritty TRS conversations, this one with Sunil Tulsiani is going to be unforgettable. Listen to it till the end because it's extremely fascinating how he converted these detective skills into money-making skills. It's Sunil Tulsiani, sir, on TRS. What's up, white boy?
the coconut.
Mr. Sunil Tulsiani.
Yes.
Sunil Tulsiani, sir.
Yes.
Are you Indian? Are you Canadian? What's up?
I'm both, man. Born here, brought up in Toronto. Two mothers. Mother India, Mother Canada.
Yeah, and two careers?
Two careers, yes. Actually, quite a few these days. But two main careers, yes.
Okay. You served as a detective?
That's right.
What are you doing now?
I am a public speaker, real estate investor, author, entrepreneur.
Okay, so it's
Yes.
actually more than two careers.
Yes.
There's a lot I wish to unpack.
Okay.
I love talking to people who've lived outside of India for as long as you have.
Yes.
Because I feel your perspectives change extremely heavily when you've lived outside the country.
Yes.
And you were born here. Some portion of your childhood was also spent in India.
That's
in the
right.
70s, I'm assuming?
80s. I'm not that old, so
Okay.
I understand.
Okay. But how old? You said you went to Canada in 1981.
Yeah, so I was about just turning 13 at that time.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you remember the 70s
Yes, I do.
in India?
Yes, I do.
What do you remember about it?
Living in Delhi, living in a home, no running water, no electricity, no toilets.
Okay. What do you remember about the culture shock you felt when you moved to Canada?
I thought Canada had paved, the pavements were paved with gold, and they were not. So when I moved to Canada, it was like something big, amazing, rich people. When I got there, actually for me, it was not true.
What was happening there?
What ends up happening, first of all, 81, either you're white or you're non-white in those days. So blacks, Chinese, Guyanese, Indians, Pakistan, doesn't matter. You are either white or the other side. And so we were not welcomed as a first-class citizens, and I didn't know that when I got there. So bullying. So go back to your own country. You smell. You're not cultured. Your parents, what are they wearing? What is this sari stuff? You wrap around. So those kind of prejudice were openly on the streets all the time. But also because we lived in those areas as well. When you leave from here, you don't go to amazing locations to live. So we ended up living in areas that were, let's call it the poor side of Toronto. Gangs, drugs, prostitutions, crime. And that's where we lived because one reason and one reason only, lack of money. Or at least we didn't want to pay a little bit more to live in a better area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these poor areas still had white people.
That's right.
Because the stereotype about Canadian people is that everyone's very polite. Like that's the worldwide stereotype.
Yeah. And it's true.
I see that as well. Like when you meet a Canadian, you can tell that this person's Canadian just because of how nice they are.
Things have changed though.
As in?
Indians are no longer second-class citizen in Canada or America. Indians used to be either a farmer, you're a laborer, or you don't know what you're talking about, you don't speak English, and all that. Over the years, tides have turned. And now, if you're an Indian walking down, let's say Toronto, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a professional. Somebody like me owning a big, large corporation in Toronto is no longer, something that people would be shocked. But in the past, that's when I became a police officer, that was a shock. Brown person in a police force was no, basically, at that time.
I do want to ask you about your police force career.
Okay.
But I actually might ask you about your childhood first. You said you moved into a slightly dangerous area when you went to Canada.
Yes.
Did you see anything crazy?
At that point?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, every day. What happened was I was in my mind Amitabh Bachchan. I was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was Sylvester Stallone, especially when they played the police officer's role. Because at the age of 13, I went. The age of 15, I knew that the only career on the planet for me was being a cop. And to me, watching those movies I thought that they were real almost, right? This is how cops should act. And when I walked down the street in bad areas, when I was 16, 17, 18, I would say, you know what? I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to take care of that. Because everywhere I walked around, I can see drug dealings happening. So I start picking up stuff that most people may not pick up. I knew which back alleys had, bad stuff going on. I knew where stabbing was happening. I knew where gangs, and I knew gang members. I knew names of the gang members as to which weapons that they carried. Did they carry a knife? Did they carry a sword? Did they carry a gun? I knew those kind of things.
How?
Because I was there, and I was smart enough to not be part of the gang, but I was also, there was a show off from them, right? They would be like, hey, this is what I carry. This is what I do. Say, that's cool, man. That's awesome. And so I kept distance, but I was not their friend as well. So I was very smart from the young age, like street smart, that you don't mess with them because if you do, you're going to get hurt, but you don't want to join them because then you get hurt from your parents, especially your father in those days. So I saw, I would say almost every day. In fact, I was chased by bad guys occasionally. When I was doing my police training, 17, 18, I knew I had to run. So there was a component, and I hated running for no reason. When you run for a reason, let's say you're playing a sports. Okay, there's a reason. I used to play soccer. Okay, there's a reason. But if you told me to just run, there's, 3 kilometers, just run. 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers. I hated it. But I did it because I knew I had to do it. So every day I would, on the streets of Toronto, busy streets of Toronto, I would just run for 5 to 10 kilometers almost every day to train myself. And some people would then stop me and say, what are you running for? And then what's this attitude? Why are you running? And I would just keep running, and they would then take that as a bad thing, and then they would chase me. So I was practicing being chased. And then as I'm running, I say, one day it'll be the reverse because I'll be chasing you.
Did that actually happen?
Not the same person, no, but type of people. The idea was I'm going to come back, but the of course, when I became a police officer, they didn't assign me to that area. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that they had to send me the same location. They sent me to another location. But if I was there, but the idea was people like you are going to be behind bars because I know how you think, because I'm street smart. I know how you negotiate. I know how you look, and I know how you threaten people without saying words. Okay. So I know that. So I just basically became so involved. I mean, day and night, my passion was, there was no plan B for me. Plan A was being a police officer, and plan B was being a police officer. That's it. I went from being a uniform officer to being a police detective to being a police negotiator. and then finally a platoon commander, which was very rare for a brown person in those days, from 1990, in the span of 15 years. What I realized is that it is not that I don't like to study. It is what I don't like to study, what they're teaching in school, is what I don't like.
Yeah. Don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree.
Yeah. So in policing, what I did was I did study a lot to get to those positions. What I did was I said, I'm going to study and I'm going to get great marks and I'm going to keep going up. And so what I found is everybody talks about this Indian movie called Three Idiots, right? What I found is if I like something, which I did this year, I'm like, what do I want to do next when I'm a police officer? Every police officer, 90% of the police officers, uniform officers, they want to be detectives. Detectives are like the heroes of police, right? And because they get to see bigger crimes and all that stuff. And they're cooler. So I wanted to immediately become a detective. And I just went back and I said, what do I have to do to become a detective? Study this, warrants, human psychology. In Canada, if you arrest somebody, you can't just have this attitude that you're going to beat up somebody and say you did it. It doesn't work that way. Policing is completely different in North America than most other parts of the world. So I have to arrest somebody and I have to tell them, listen, you don't have to talk to me. And if you do talk to me, I'm going to use it against you in the court of law. So be quiet, call your lawyer. But after that, they expect me to get a confession from you. Okay? So in a nice way. And there are laws of how to get that confession as well. Meaning if I tricked you in confession, the judge might say, well, that was a trickery. Sorry, we're going to withdraw that evidence. And now a person can walk. Okay? I became really, really good at where the person gets arrested, a uniform officers, they try. And then there was a protocol. If there's a certain level of crime, then they can call people like me. And I would walk in. And I would then get them to say, this is why I did it, this is how I did it, and I did it.
So you've seen some brutal criminals.
Brutal criminals, people who just basically, are not good people on the planet for whatever reason, what they did. And then that teaching of how to get somebody going, I'm not telling, because, they don't have to talk. And the other thing I want to share something here, which most people probably won't know, is this. People watch movies where detectives go in, they have CSI, you have your, hair sample, you have your DNA, you have this and that, and deep in science involved sometimes with all that. The real crime, more than 90% on the planet, gets investigated and closed by bad guys saying, I did it. But they can't make movie on that because it'd be boring. It'd be too boring if they keep making movies on that. Movies have to be like there's heart and this and that. Oh, yeah, there's glasses, and then this and that. Now, what happens is when somebody says I did it, then my job is to make sure that he's not just saying it. Maybe his brother did it, but then he's taking, then I say, oh, good. Tell me how you did it. So then he tells me. Then we go back and we break the story back and forth to make sure that he's not lying. Okay, so he starts the story, he ends the story, and then I jump here, then I jump back, and then jump here. So he doesn't have a time to think if he's lying. He doesn't know that he can't do that. Okay, so then he or she has a hard time to doing that. It's very important that in my career to say, okay, how do I get this man who has committed whether it's assault, robbery, domestic violence, he's about to kill a person. How do I get him after I told him he shouldn't be talking to me? Okay, this is the laws of at least US and Canada. You got to tell them, you got to read them their rights openly. Tell them, don't talk to me. If you do talk to me, then I'm going to use it against you in the court of law, and you should talk to your lawyer. Do you want me to call your lawyer? Right? And when they call the lawyer, I was so good that they would call the lawyer, and lawyer will say, don't say anything to them, basically, and their other conversations, and they hang up. And then they called me, and then 2 hours later, he's given a whole confession on what, how, and all that stuff. So I said, what is most important? And they said the most important part is we want detectives to walk in, and we want people to say they did it because it's cheapest way to solve a crime, right? And if we get to how to, then what we do is we go back And he said, this is how I did it. At 1:00, I went there. Then we say, let's look at the camera if he's telling the truth. So then we put everything together. And was there hair there? Yeah, we found a hair. We found his fingerprints. Because most people are smart enough, if they do serious crime, they're going to put gloves on. Okay? They're going to do this. In the movies, they show that they don't do that. But today, it's very tough to not get caught because of CCTV cameras and social media and the phones and all that. But when I was doing it, there was no cell phones. It was just starting at that point.
What's the psychological commonality in every bad person that you've met?
Always a trigger, always a reason that. So there's like, say, economic crimes, which is I don't have the money. There's the drugs. That's another one. So somebody, nice person, gets stuck with drugs. I'm talking about mostly hard drugs, cocaine, and on. And they get addicted, and now they can't find money. So that. The other one is most of the murders were happening because they knew each other.
And there was some personal vendetta.
That's right. So in movies, most of the movies, you'll see it's like somebody else or something like that. Somebody walking down the street, they just killed somebody because of whatever, or robbing or whatever. But most of the time, it was always a motive. There was always. So I always went back and said, what's the motive of this? What's the motive? And everything gets reverse engineered from the motive to where I found them. Even my business today, everything gets reverse engineered to what do I want today? Then go back here and start my actions going towards what I want 2 years from now, 3 years or 5 years from now. And my police negotiation techniques help me with my business negotiation techniques, obviously.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be unpacking that, but I feel there's a lot of dark shit you've seen in your police career. Like something tells me.
Yeah.
Some of that stayed with you?
Yeah, it does stay with you. I think as time goes on, it is lessened. The impact is lessened. But a 3-year-old girl gets, that stays with you for a long time. Or if somebody who's the age of your child, like son or daughter, and they get killed, that could have been prevented, that stays with you. Because you come home and you go, it could have been them. And you feel them, right? You feel the parents' pain. And then if the bad guy doesn't show remorse, that's even worse, right? That's even worse.
What causes a bad person to not show remorse?
They think that they're doing them a favor, like they're mentally unstable. And if a 8-year-old child, for example, does something that father of certain background thinks that's disobeying him at the age of 8, and it's the honor killing, or it's the killing, or he just takes a bat and just smashes them in the head, and then you would think that they would go, oh my God, what did I do? Most of them will, but the ones that stick with me is the ones who say, well, he should have listened to me, right? He should have listened to me. Those kind of things stay with you. So the sexual with children, especially, people saying back and forth to men and women, that level is quite simple. The one deeper one is, I don't think I've ever talked about this stuff anywhere in any TV or media, anywhere in the world. So, but the point here is so there was a group, police group. You got the FBI, CIA, and USA, but there's a group in Canada. The X group was there, and it was all about, if you do this, we'll give you this, and I got so many perks and all that. But I refused because of that reason, is because we deal with some dark stuff, and I saw myself, I can't do that. I can't. But it's almost cool to say I solved those crimes, right? But it was not something I could do. So especially the child molestations, and then the parents would share them with their friends, if you get what I mean.
You can open that thought up here. The audience, they get what you're saying.
Yes,
just open that thought up.
Yeah, that's what it is. They'd have sexual relationship with the little children, that they would share the children with their friends.
What was their thought process?
It's everything that we do is normal, and this is much better.
Like when multiple people do it to my kid.
Yeah, and then their kids could come to them.
Wow.
Right? It's like sharing. It's like sharing, and there's a behind the scene, things that are happening. And the saddest part is that after a while, the children don't know. Well, children don't know anyways. But after a while, even children who went through that are like thinking that's normal because they don't know any better. Like I told you, when I went to school, normality was they'll beat me up. That's normal at the age of 8, 9, 10. Go ahead, hit me. I even say to my teacher, go ahead, hit harder than you can. Show me you're a man, because I just hated some teachers. I said, go ahead, hit me hard. And so what we saw there was some children, they actually would do the sexual act, and then they would just go play. And then they're taught not to talk about it. That's it. It would be like, so that stayed with me for a while. I'm like, because what they do is they put you through, okay, do you want to try doing it? I'm like, you know what? It's really interesting. I'll try it. And they said, okay, we'll put you through a test. And then you go to a group. Then there's a week training. And this is not even a training. It's just to see if you're going to handle it. And then the fourth day, there was 5-day thing. The fourth day, I just said, that's it. I'm not doing it. I left. Because the stuff that I saw, because they were every day trying to condition you that this is what you're going to see. And they wanted to see if you're going to, during the investigation, are you going to run away? They'd rather have. So I think the number was 98 or 97% of the trained officers quit.
Because it was that dark.
It's just they could. So even the single, unmarried people couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. And that was, that was the darkest side. Because I went into policing saying, I'm the hero. I'm going to clean up the streets, right? And so like, what else could I do? Let's say, let's go into drugs. Okay, let's do drugs. Not do drugs. And then go into, okay, I want into investigation sites, like murder investigation. Well, that's cool. Let's do that. And then I said, what else is there? They go, this is it. Okay, let's do that. And then it's like, what else is there? Then I formed my own units, like field to remain units or warrant squads. So I was in charge of those units, and they're like, okay, let's go and do this. Which type of people are we going to go arrest now and investigate? Now, these are a lot of struggles, but I can tell you, I had a lot of fun in the police. After the first couple of years, I realized that if I keep upgrading me, because either I'm a liability or I'm an asset, and it's what I say and what I do proves I'm a liability or an asset. So if I'm an asset, then start acting, growing, start getting courses, and upgrade your skills. So then you don't have to tell people that you are an asset. People will look at you and say, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to investigate. You know what? I can trust him to go and do this and all that. So that's what I decided to do all my life of policing life. 15 years of that is this just, study. And I would work 12 hours, which means I would wake up at 4 in the morning. 5 o'clock is the shift. I finish at 5 to 5 or 6 to 6. And then I would go study because I know that I have to study for this. And I would study, go into a library, lock myself in a booth, and I would study like a student that I should have done when I was younger, I guess. And what I found was when I was studying psychology, human psychology, I studied investigative skills, statement taking, dealing with criminals who don't want to talk to you, next of kin, how to go to somebody and say your son just died. In Canada, there's actually a squad now because I started that in our police force, next of kin squad. Because if somebody dies, that person will remember for the rest of life how the police officer approached and the words and tonality that was used. Okay? So we actually became, then I started to train other officers how you would go, how would you look at that person, and which words to use, which emotions to use, never make a phone call and don't do this, show up, and how to say to an Indian person, how to say to an Asian person like Chinese, how to say to white. So we had a little bit of that because the Indian wife, for example, may react to her husband's death differently. They may start wailing, like start to scream and cry. And then the white officer's like, well, what happened? And when they go to the other one, and the white wife, she may just be quiet. Chinese father, for example, Asian fathers, for example, they find out. I remember going to him and saying, your daughter just died. And he just, I know he's hurting, but he just said, how? And I told him, and he goes, thank you. So I was teaching them different modalities of, there's going to be different reactions, but respect and follow up with those people. Because the words you say, that moment is going to slow down for these people. The moment you say, I have a bad news for you, your whatever just died, however they died, they are going to remember that for the rest of their lives. Okay. And then what happens after that? Confusion. Funeral arrangements. People. So I used to have my officers go in, and I used to do this as well. I used to say, I'm here as long as you need me. And you need, who's your brother? Who's your family? Who's this? Then we make the phone calls, brought them in, make them sit down, give them my card. This is what it is. Call me anytime you want. When I say all the time, they, obviously at night they wouldn't call me, but they would be respected to the point where their loss gets reduced a little bit. You can't just bring them back. I get it. But, after months, 6 months, a year, some of those people came back to me and said, what you did was the best thing, and they would cry. Yeah.
How do people deal with the death of a loved one over time, especially if it's a violent death?
Again, different cultures, I've seen that. And they say that over time, things will get better, or you'll forget, or something like that. But the truth is, you don't ever forget. You don't ever forget, especially on special days, birthdays, Diwali, Christmas, whatever. You never forget. It's there, always there. And so if they died naturally versus an accident versus got murdered, and if they did get murdered, then was the justice served? Did the bad guy got justice that they thought was justice? And if the bad guy actually got off completely, then the reaction are different. Now, there are a very small group of people that would say, I forgive you. I forgive that person, and I've moved on. There are people like that. There are very monks, and they worked on themselves, right? They worked on themselves, and they say, I need to let this go because it's good for me and my family. And if I let this go, it doesn't mean I love that person less. But there are very few people. But if somebody who did something bad to their family, especially, and again, is it a father? Is it a son? Is it a young child? Is it a wife? Is it a husband? Wife will deal with differently, for example, than the husband, for example. If a husband is wealthy, well off, and the wife gets killed, probably a few years down the road, he remarries. Not that he'll forget the first wife, but it's easier for him than if he was completely poor or their relationship was different, for example. And if the wife, unfortunately, a lot of time it's the wives that I used to go to and say, your husband died. It was in my career, I saw most men die than women die, because most men were the ones who were working outside. They're driving trucks. They're doing drugs, and they're doing bad things. And women were not as bad in that area, in crime wise per se. So it was always like I walk in. I remember walking into. It was a husband driving at night at 2 a.m. probably doing like 200 kilometers, and he lost it, rolled over. His body got smashed, and then he was all over the road, physically all over the road. So after I was in charge, so nobody was there for next of kin. So we basically called the next of kin people. Nobody was there. So I said, you know what? I'll just go myself. And then I took a young officer with me. So then he learns from me. And I walked down, and then it was like 7 a.m. and she opens the door, and very typical wife, hi officer. And then she says hello and all that stuff. She says, come on in. We came in, and now she's saying, Johnny, get ready. Your father is going to be here very soon. Joe, you need to get ready very, very quickly. You got to go to the school. Come on, let's get ready. I'm so tired. I got your breakfast ready. And then she looked at us and she said, oh, so I'm sorry. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. I'm just running late right now. And another. We know what's about to happen, right? And her energy is so powerful, so beautiful, so positive. And just to know seconds before and then see them seconds after, I see the whole world melt in front of my eyes, in them. Their world I could look at their face and their world just gone, right? So once I told her that, and we were taught, don't say pass away. Don't say he's gone to another world or whatever.
Why?
Certain cultures, pass away could mean he just passed on to some other street or he walked away to something like that. So there were times when somebody walked in and said, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, there's some bad news that your son just passed away. Oh, okay, that's fine. Thank you. No, you don't understand. Your son passed away. And they thought it was like, if they don't hear so basically the training was use the word dead. I'm sorry to tell you, but your son just died. And didn't wait. Just look at them and say it. And then their reaction is usually either they fall to the ground or they come into your arms or they start crying or they ask you to repeat, right? Or they say something like, oh, it can't be. It's not possible. Not my, no, not mine, So that is where I have to be ready for their reaction, right? And then they ask like what happened, and then we have to do all the arrangements and things like that. And the main thing is their safety now, their mental health and what they're going to. Now their two young kids are sitting there, so we tell the kids to can you have your kids go into a room for a while? I just want to talk to you personally. So now she knows, but the kids don't know. And, they're waiting for their father to come home. Father's never coming home. And now she wants to see the dead body. We can't really show her the dead body because how he looks right now. And then we have to prepare her that even if eventually a few days down the road, we have to prepare her that actually, this is the case where, he's unrecognizable actually. He's unrecognizable. So I have seen a human body spread over half a kilometer where we were just picking up pieces of body parts of each and then try to kind of put it together. But you can't, the face is gone. Because what happens is in a fight or racing or accidents, the skin, if it's a motorcycle, for example, or the car flipped many times, the skin just comes off, like it just grinds to the, it's just gone. And then we in Canada, we shut down the whole highway and we hire somebody and we properly package with respect and all that. And there are times you can't recognize, like when I walk to some places, you can't even recognize that's a human being, even if they're in the same one part. So those things stick around with you as well, because you can take the smell home.
You can take the smell home.
Yeah, that smell, human being, dead smell, it's very unique, very different.
What is it like?
To me, it stinks. It is something that you can't even, I used to put some sort of ointment in my ear, in my nose, just so I can just look at that. Because a lot of young officers will go up and they'll start throwing up because it's not only the visual, but the essence of dead body. And then after that, most of the time there's postmortem, which I have attended. They're also brutal to me. They're brutal. And in Canada, as a OIC, officer in charge, you must attend the postmortem with the doctor. And you must be present in the room because you are almost like a witness to the doctor. Okay? And then doctor is... I remember the first time I went to postmortem, and the doctor is just, he's got a saw and he's sawing this off, and with the dust flying in the air, I couldn't even it was the smell. Smell was just like, and you're breathing in this air with all this dust, right? And he opens up and then he says, "You see this?" I said, "No, I don't see it." He goes, "Give me your hand." So I had the gloves on and he put my hand inside the head and he said, "You feel this?" I said, "Yes." And he goes, "You shouldn't be feeling this. That means it's broken. Okay, the neck is broken." So he basically helped me with it. And it was disgusting. It was disgusting. And then the intestines, I don't know, I never felt it before, ever. He pulls out the intestine. If you ever felt the worst washroom on the planet, and somebody, like 100 people went and pooed in that washroom and didn't clean it, that's what it smells like. And he pulls it out and you can just, and then he has to weigh them, each of those parts.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know why doctors do that. and it's usually the cause of death. Is there's any issues? There's this suspicious. So if somebody got stabbed by a knife, they also want to know what caused the death. Was it ruptured? What was the first thing? It's more about being so accurate, so then they can tell and they can study in the future why things happen, how it happens, and they can go into court and say precisely, this is how it happened, this is how the knife went in or went in, and all that. That's why. So they just do it as a check mark procedure, And then what if they weigh something that is double the size? They're going to go, why is this double the size? Maybe he was poisoned. Maybe there was a reason for that. So that's why they do it, everything. And I can remember that smell today, postmortem smell today, because that smell is so distinct and not a good smell, really disgusting smell. So those are the experiences that stay with you sometimes when you're a police officer, especially outside, I suppose, in Canada, United States.
Have you dealt with like a sort of long-term case with like serial killers or anything like that?
Not serial killers per se, but I remember a case where two friends, they loved each other for a long, long time, lived just north of Toronto, outskirts of Toronto, in a smaller town. And one lent, I think it was $250,000 in I don't know, maybe about 30 years ago. So $250,000 would be like $1 million today or something like that. So lent $250,000, and then something happened, and then this guy is not giving his money back. Okay, so I remember to me it was like a really interesting case, because now I'm working with this group of officers who are tracking a big tractor trailers, big trucks, who steal electronics, and then they immediately take them off to a ship, and then that ship takes it to somewhere in Asia or somewhere in another country. So this is a big thing that we're working on, and all. And then, so this guy they're both in their 60s or something like that, maybe late 50s and 60s. The guy who lent the money decided that he wants to kill this guy, but then he's too smart and he's not a killer. So he's like, he goes to another person and he says, "This is what I want to do. Do you know a hitman who can do the hit?" So this guy says, "I don't know anybody, but I know somebody who may know somebody." And so this is the guy we're investigating for stealing stuff. We have an undercover cop who's his pretend friend. So he goes to an undercover cop, and says, "Do you know a hitman?" And now we're working from stolen goods to a murder investigation. So he says, yeah, I know somebody. And that's how the investigation started. So I moved from that. I said, I want to be in here. I want to be part of this. And so we had, I would say, a team of 30 or 40 people. This is how crazy it can get for investigation. 30 or 40 people, 6 to 8 months of investigation, wiretaps, investigation. Where does he walk? What time does he do it? We got people watching him. We got people watching the victim, supposed victim. We got why, the reverse engineering and all that stuff. So anyways, long story short, this person, let's call it the bad guy, is too smart. He doesn't pick up the phone and talk about it at all. Never. In those days, let's say if there were phones, they were the big ones, the analog ones. So very few people had those phones. So it's basically landlines. So he would not call the line. So anytime he met his friend, it was always he drove to him in a secluded area. There's no CCTV cameras outside. And he would tell them, this is what. We finally basically said to him, yeah, it would cost this much money. We know somebody. And this guy says, bad guy says, I don't want to deal with the bad guy or anybody indirectly or directly. I just want to deal with you. You take care of everything and I'll pay you and that's it. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be like that. So now our biggest problem was we had everything, conspiracy to commit murder, basically. But we cannot prove that it's him. We can prove this guy did it, not this guy. Because this guy is the one who came and said, do you know Hitman? So now you're sitting there and thinking, how do you do this? Because you don't want to do all this work. And on technicality, he gets released. Which happens in Canada and US is like, no innocent person can ever or should be convicted. I'm sure there are people who do, but I'm just saying that would be a very, very small group of people. So the burden of proof is not that I didn't do it. Its burden is on the state to say, you did it beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest level of proof in the court to do that. And all we have to do is raise a doubt, a small doubt, in the beyond a reasonable doubt. Judge has to throw it out. So we can't risk that at all. It would be a lot of stuff. So how do you do it? So I remember being with my officers in a boardroom with a vision board, sitting there for hours, and then boom, something would come up and say, hey, let's do it this way, or let's do it that way. So what we did was we said, okay, the guy's like, but I want to see a photo of a dead body.
Why?
Because he's paying the hitman.
Oh, okay.
He wants to make sure his job is done.
Okay. All right.
And that's not abnormal, actually. Because then if he didn't want that, we could have just, the hitman, so we found a police hitman who could have said, oh, it's done, believe me, and now give me the money, right? So he's like, no, I want to see the photo. So he tells him, so it's like this person needs to take a photo to this person needs to take a photo to that person, and no one talks on the phone. So we can't do it. So we're wiretapping his phone. We're tapping his phone. We're tapping like 10, 20 other people's phone, because they call each other, their daughters, whatever. Maybe they'll say something to their wife or something like that. We're tapping everybody's phone. Nobody's saying anything because he only knows it. And he's so smart, intelligent, educated, rich that he's not going to say it. But he wants the job done. So how do you charge him for the purpose of convicting him? In Canada, we're not supposed to just charge. We're supposed to figure out if there's going to be conviction or not, most likely. So we just sat in there. So basically what we did was we didn't want to tell the victim about this. Now we have no choice. So we go to a victim, we sit them down, his wife down, his kids, like, go away. And we said, we were going to tell you something. And he thought it was his buddy, his friend. I said, well, your buddy is actually wanting to kill you.
Wow.
And he's like, what? He goes, you borrowed some money? He goes, he would kill me for money? Like, he didn't even think that would be, come across his mind. And he said, yes. And we're the police, so don't worry, right? And what we ended up doing, we hired a film a person that did a bullet, hair in the middle. And to the point where if you look at it, it looked like a depth, like bullet went in. Just like a movie decorator or whatever.
Like a makeup artist.
Makeup artist, yeah. But they bought a murder makeup artist. Took him, and then they kind of depicted the idea. They threw him in the trunk of a car with the trunk open and picture him dying with a bullet in his head. And then, then he got up and, of course, washed his face. And then we told him, you cannot ever be seen for the next whatever time, anywhere, because this would all jeopardize the entire case. If anybody even sees you for a second, the other guy might know that this is not it, right? So we had to take care of that. that, and then the wife, listen, you cannot talk to anybody, cannot tell them. Now imagine this, wife has to act that her husband just got shot. It's like crazy, but we ended up doing it. We said, okay, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna and so what we needed for proof was him saying and him giving the money to the hitman for the charges of conspiracy to commit murder and other charges as well, which was hard to now. So we have one part now. Problem was we have one person that we're paying money to, but that person is not the bad guy. He's going to get charged, but this is the main guy. So how do you get him to do it with Canadian laws? How do you do that? And so we sat there. Finally, we came up with a plan, and plan was very simple. This, we had the hitman call this guy, and he says, "You don't know who I am, but I've done my job. You saw the photo. I didn't get the money. You have 2 hours or else click." So the mistake he did was, that was the whole idea actually. He picks up the phone, calls his friend, and we're taping both of them. And that's where the confession was. Oh my God, how come, you told me I'm not going to be involved. I told you before I did the hitman, and he went on and on because for him, it was a stress that he had to relieve, right? And he just basically gave us the best confession. and then basically, now that he did that, then all we had to do was collect the money, or him to collect them. So the money has to exchange to even make it better proof. So then this guy gave the money to this guy who went to a farm. In a farm, they hid the money somewhere, and then they gave the address. But we are tracking him, we're tracking everybody, and then put it all together, right? And then we can prove that the money came from this house, and then somebody is giving the bag to this guy, and then that guy took the bag and then put it in there. And each of them have fingerprints, and they have videos of everybody doing it, and then they all got arrested.
Wow.
That is not what's depicted in real movies. Yeah. That's, if you look at it, it's like a huge police hidden places. Like if in Canada, if you drive around, even Canadians, when they drive around certain buildings, you won't even know it's a police station. It'd be like ABC Corporation. And everybody would walk into it as a businessman. And once they walk into as a businessman, then they go inside. And if they need to change uniform, they do it. Otherwise, they don't put on, they walk in with T-shirts. So people think there's a corporation going on. So people can be living there for all their lives. How do I know that? Because I didn't know. Until one day, they called me. See, when I was younger, I watched these movies like Rambo. And the great thing about Rambo and all those movies are, they always come to this point where they go, there's this big case, and we need you, and only you can solve it. And the guy says, no. And they go, please, we need you. Government needs you. And all my life, I dreamt that I'm going to have police department come to me and say, we need you. And I remember 3 years into my policing, my detachment commander called me in, and he goes, shut the door. I thought I was in trouble. He goes, what I'm about to share with you, it cannot go anywhere. And inside, I'm like, yes. He says, there's a mission. And you really, really fit that mission. Inside, I'm like, wow. And we can't tell you anything about it right now. So I'm going to give you an address. You're going to go to that address. You're not going to tell anybody in the police station you're going there. You're not going to tell your wife. You're not going to tell anybody. You're going to go to there. You're going to meet this guy only. If you don't do everything precisely, you will lose your badge. Inside, I'm like, yes. My dream is coming true. So then I go there. I look around. It looks like a warehouse. I'm like, I'm at the wrong address. And it's the same address. So I push the button and I see cameras all over and big metal doors and all that stuff. And then and I'm sitting there and I can see that they're watching me, or I feel it anyways, right? And they come down. I go into the room and they go, "Do you know this person?" I said, "No." He go, do you speak Hindi?" I said, "Yeah, I speak Hindi." They go, "We need somebody like you." Inside, I'm like, and outside I go, "Yeah, but you have to tell me what this is all about. I'm not sure if I want this." I'm like, but inside I'm like, this is my dream come true that the police department needs me. Long story short, I had the good skills, street smarts, and I spoke Hindi. And the bad guy we were trailing was somebody who spoke Hindi. And then that was one of the reasons why they were looking for officers. And in those days, we didn't have too many Hindi speaking officers. So it was like perfect. And in reality, they really needed me. So they asked me questions about my belief system, this system, crazy questions that I thought has nothing to do with it. But I guess they were trying to align me with the bad guys' motives and things like that.
Because he had cultural motives.
Yeah, cultural, as well as, do you know somebody that knows the bad guy? Okay, how often do you visit Indian temple? How often do you do this? Do you go to Gurdwara? So I just kept answering. But later on, I understood it was a profile, basically. If you don't fit in that profile, then even if there's a chance that I can compromise the mission, they're going to let me go. But before they started, they say, you're going to learn some stuff. And you will be either rejected or accepted. If you get rejected, you have never seen this place, you never met us. I'm like, this is like a movie. It's like amazing. So anyways, finally I said, and then I answered. They went back. They come back. Big white detective guys. They go, "We want you." And then they got a brief. Brief is basically a summary of the case, which is, I never read books. Okay, they put a huge, I don't know how many pages, and they go, "Start reading now." I'm like, "Oh." He goes, "Yeah, just start now." And your detachment commander has been told, you're not going back to detachment until we tell you. And you have gone to this, and they made up a Niagara Falls. You've gone there for a special assignment. It has nothing to do with this, right? No one, including your friends, your partners, no one is going to know, or you are allowed to talk to them. I'm like, this is secretive CIA stuff. I love this shit. And then basically that is how I got that case, and that's how I started as a young officer. And there were officers who were jealous because, hey, he's only been on for 3 years. He got this big assignment. But one of the main reasons I got that assignment is because of scarcity of Indian officers, and the bad guy was Indian.
Are you still not allowed to talk about the case?
There are a lot of stuff that you can't talk about. Like, say, techniques. So the stuff that I shared with you about the bullet, it's not a big technique. But there are techniques that were used before, that we are sworn that you can't talk about this stuff. Because they could, even today, they may use certain percentage of it. And beautiful part is that I look back and I say that I was very lucky because I got this case. And then when I did really well with that, somebody else came along and then said, "Why don't you come here?" And then, so I had white officers who started getting very upset. Why does this brown officer with less years get this? And I've been on for 5 or 10 years and I don't even get a chance, right? But then when I go there, I have the same rule: work really hard, show up early, leave late. And they all loved me. And, yeah.
Yeah, I used to be very afraid of the professional world when I was in college.
Yeah.
Until you actually enter the professional world and you realize that just by putting in that extra 10% effort, you stand out
That's
from the
right.
crowd.
That's right.
It's not as scary as the professors or the relatives tell you.
Yeah.
It boils down to the basics, and you can learn those basics from sports, from movies. that just stand out a little bit from the crowd?
Tony Robbins, who is I consider him to my mentor. I'm very fortunate to share stages with him. He talks about if you want to be poor, should be fair. And if you want to be fair, you should be good. So if you want poor results, be fair, the next level up. And if you want to be fair, you have to be good. And if you want to be good, you have to be excellent. So these kind of distances in each of them. But if you want to be outstanding, you have to go this far. So all of the other ones are this far apart. But if you want to be like similar to professional, something like that, sometimes you just have to go the extra mile or extra couple of miles, and all of a sudden you're in a different league.
Yeah. And if you consistently do that, you'll consistently keep growing even after you've grown.
Yeah, of course.
Just add that little extra bit of cheese on top of everyone's pizzas.
Because I think also the people who are, let's say people who are fair, their level also increases, but then they also stay in fair category. The good 10 years ago is no longer good anymore. They also increased a little bit, or they went down to fair, even though they have the same skills. So everybody has to kind of increase a little bit with the time. The change is very, very, very important.
Why did you choose to switch careers? And you also spoke about how a lot of officers would kind of lose their minds towards the end of their tenure.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's an accumulation of all these things you spoke about.
There's of course, and then there's a relationship aspect of it. Majority of the officers' divorce rates are in U.S. and Canada especially much higher than the regular person. Okay, that's one. So there's a relationship aspect of it. Then there's the aspect of the danger, meaning you go out and you work. It's unpredictable work. Then there's the most of them work day and night, and then their health issue. That's that. Then all the stuff that we talked about, the mental issues, and so 30 years is the minimum usually in police force, and most of them actually stay until they die, or very few of them actually retire and be happy and all that stuff. Majority of them are not very happy at the end of the day. They don't have. They may have married 4 or 5 times. They lost all their money because their wives took all the money. Pension and all that is also gone. Half of them. And a lot of them end up living. So they do very well. They got a house. They're happy. And when they retire, they live in a basement, or they live in a 1-bedroom condo somewhere that they would never live in the past because it's cheap. So that's the unfortunate part, that the people who protect the society end up becoming and taking on internally some of the bad stuff, the negative stuff, and they become that. And then they basically pass on with the intent of, I had a good career, and then towards the end, it started going down a bit. And then now there are officers, obviously they retire, they do very well, they have a nice house and all that. But what I did, leaving police force after 15 years, for the reason that I left, I would say less than 1% would have done that.
What was the reason?
My wife comes to me one day and says, we're going to have a divorce because you work days, you work nights, you work long hours, you don't pay attention to children, you don't, And for the last 2 years, so into the 13th year into the policing, we started fighting a lot. And I never had heard her say that we're going to have to. But then towards the 14 and a half or something years into policing, close to 15, she said, okay, you have a choice. Leave the job, leave me. Which one? Basically. Okay. So I went back to all my friends, went back to my parents, went back to my relatives, and 99% of them say, leave her. This is your job. What are you going to do? This is what your passion is. Why would she even ask? Why would she even dare to ask you, right? And when you got married to her, you were a police officer. So it's not like I became police officer after. Okay. So I got the advice, leave her. I said to myself, I always said when I was a police officer, when we were talking to people, what's more important, your job or the family? And I used to always say my family, but I truly was not acting. Because if tomorrow I need to go on a vacation or I promise something to my children and police department called me and I had a choice to tell the police department, you know what, I don't want to work today because of my family, I would run out the door because that was my passion. That's what I love to do. So I sat there, didn't know, what am I going to do? Like I was the being a police officer. I was not doing police officer. This is who I am. This is my identity. So I didn't even know if I leave policing, what am I going to do? Well, like, no business experience, no connections, no other job. Like I didn't even think I can do any of the job. So I left. I said to my wife, okay, I'll leave the police force. So I left the police force.
With no idea of what you're going to do next.
No. So I basically went to my boss and I said, I'm having family issues. I'm having health issues, verge of a divorce. Can you give me 1 year unpaid leave of absence? Because the scariest part for me was how, as a man, not bringing money or taking care of our children. No, that's the scariest part. So in the history of the Ontario Provincial Police, my commanding officer said, no one ever has asked to take 1 year off, even though it's unpaid. And the idea was, I'll do something for 1 year. And if it doesn't work out, my position needs to be ready. I want to be back to my position, starting the same. And they laughed. They laughed. And my commanding officer says, I even feel ashamed to even put this in, and because I put in an application, he has to approve it and support me for it to go to further up for somebody who makes a decision, commissioner or whatever. And he wasn't doing it. I said, please do this for me. And he said, they're going to laugh at you, but they're going to laugh at me too. No one has done it. You want 2 months? You want a month? I said, no, I want a year. 2 months, there's no, because I was scared. In one month, what am I going to do? And I had no idea what I was going to do in 1 year. But I just want that safety net. It went up all the way up into the ladder, came back down, and it got approved. Because they said we value you. The idea was either you lose me or you give me this. And so they are hoping that I'm not going to do well. I'm going to come back, right? So my boss got me into the room, and he said, and he was kind of surprised and upset at the same time, because he was telling me, no, it's never going to get approved, never going to. And he says, you got approved. And then he leaned over and said, we know you'll be back. And I took it like he's saying, you're going to fail. You're nothing without us, type of deal. And I don't know if that's what he meant, but that's how he took it. And I kind of went back in my mind, watch me, type of deal. So I walk off and no money coming in. Scariest thing that I think I did.
This is something I've hypothetically thought of for myself a lot, in terms of switching careers and not feeling sure about where the next paycheck will come from. I think it challenges you on a very primal level as a man.
For sure. For sure. I would say it was the hardest thing I did from a decision point of view as a man.
How old were you?
I was 30, so 18 years ago. I'm 54 now, 36.
And you have kids and everything at this point?
Yeah, we have 2 children. We had 2 children. We still have 2 children. And my wife, we have a house, we have a mortgage, we have payments, we have all that stuff. And secure job, right? Secure job that you love. To give that up was probably the hardest thing I did. I remember going to a course, a self-development course, and they put a arrow to your throat on a soft part with a pointed arrow, and the other point of the arrow goes against a wall, and you're supposed to walk towards the arrow. Either the arrow goes through you or the arrow breaks, one of the two. And on the arrow, you put in your worst fear that you want to break. And it was, my fear was, losing the job. That's what I wrote on that arrow. and I walked towards it, and then the arrow broke, and that became the idea that now the fear is broken, that you can do it. Or walking on fire, same thing. Just before I walked on fire, man, I said, if I can walk on the fire, then this is nothing. Those are the things I started doing that first year as well. But I had no clue what I'm going to do. I had no idea. I was just scared just financially. I'm like, what am I going to do? What if they take away my house? Blah, 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 all that stuff. And you can't take care. So, and on top of that, my entire family said, go for it. You're awesome. You're amazing. We believe in you. We trust you. You should do what you love. No one said that. No one said that. Everybody basically said, you're crazy. Okay. This is stupid. You have a secure job. You have a family. And, work it out with your wife. I'm sure she'll agree. Don't worry. Eventually she'll say yes. Don't worry about it. And don't fly too high. Don't be unreasonable. Just be reasonable. This is your job. This is what you're supposed to do. You're made for this and all that. So everybody told me not to do it. So I've learned this now. Of course, I teach it all over the world, is that if everybody's telling you that you're crazy, that means you're on the right way. If everybody's telling you you're awesome, you're amazing, you're great, and that means you have chosen a goal that is probably pretty small.
What do you practically do, like in that 1 year?
That year, I opened up a newspaper, and there's a guy named Robert Allen who's coming to Mumbai at Growth Summit, and he says, buy real estate, no money down.
What?
Buy real estate, no money down, no money. Exactly, was my thing. Was like, how do you invest in real estate when you have no money? Stupid idea. And my police detective hat just said, garbage, bakwas, scam, But somehow that newspaper, and I don't read that newspaper often, but that day, for whatever reason, I read it, and that there was an ad just showed up again, second time. And something told me to go. I went. And something told me to do something I had never done before, which was to invest $5,000 in a course. It was a 3-day event. I hadn't even invested $10 before. $20, maybe $50. I haven't done that. Entertainment, yes. But self-development, seminar, no. I go and spend $5,000. I come home worried what my wife's going to say. Okay, first, there's no job. There's no income coming in. And then you go back and you spend $5,000. You're supposed to be bringing the money, not spending the money, right? So I took that course, and that course changed my life, by the way. I did not know that I was a real estate investor. All I wanted to do is maybe open up a shop, open up a restaurant, or open something so I can start making money quickly. Then I was thinking, take the money out from my savings and then buy a store. Those were things that were going in my mind. Franchise shows, business shows. I would have started attending any of the shows. Personal growth shows. I just basically started attending everybody that showed up, if it was related to law of attraction, money, cash flow, real estate, business. Anywhere where they talk about success, I just showed up. And I took that course, spent $5,000. That course, of course, I took a lot of courses during that year, but that course was the reason why I bought and sold 77 properties in 1 year, mostly no money.
What do you mean mostly no money?
But some of the properties I had put money in.
No, you'll have to break this down for an Indian audience. I didn't understand the mathematics.
Okay. There are methods that you can invest in real estate if you have zero money, no money. Okay.
In Canada?
Everywhere in the world.
Really?
Yes, even in India, yes.
Okay.
So of the 77, I would say closer to 65 to 70, because I didn't have money to buy 77 or sell 77 properties. Okay. Most of that happened because I learned how to do it. Then I put it into practice in there. And that happened in Toronto area or Ontario. And this is what I've been teaching people actually for the last 18 years, how to do that in anywhere in the world. And the first thing that people say, not in my country. It's not possible. I went to Lithuania, Riga, other parts of Europe, USA, Canada, India, because we started our club last year in India in 2022. People say, no, it's not possible here, but it happens in every business, every country. Laws are slightly different. Legalities are different. Accounting system is slightly different, but it's doable as long as it's a free society that you're allowed to own properties. As long as the laws allow that, then yes, you can do it. There are some countries, they don't allow it, that they won't work there. So in that 77 properties, the funny part was I wrote down, Sunil Tulsiani, will make $200,000 in 1 year. Signed it, dated it, just like a bond, like a promise, like a written notice. And I made about 16 copies of it, and I would put it all over my home. Washroom, workout place, a fridge, my drawers. You open the drawers. You open my drawers, boom, one on each side. And I get to see it every day. And I hand wrote those notes. Signed it. And when I analyze it now, why I wrote $200,000, I didn't know at that time. I realized that I used to make, as a platoon commander, after working overtime, extra hours, about $100,000. So I suppose if I can make $200,000, I would feel safe to leave my policing at the end of the 12 month. And remember, I had a 12-month clock ticking that either I succeed or I go back. And that's also a lesson, by the way. If you have a goal with a deadline that has a pressure or reason or purpose, you can achieve it. So in this $200,000 is what I wrote. In 3 months, I make $200,000. 3 months. I had never done that in my life. I said, here's a poor guy living in basically slums in Delhi. Lives poor. He's been poor most of his life. Then he becomes slightly better than poor, and then he becomes middle class. I always want to be a millionaire. I wonder if my trick about $200,000 would that work on $1 million in the same time frame? I, Sunil Tulsiani, will make $1 million by this date. Signed it, dated it, made 16 copies, and replaced the 200,000 ones and put it somewhere else. Didn't even believe it. Didn't even know how to do it. Didn't even have a idea if this is possible. But I said to myself, I just did the impossible. So why? So the other idea was, since I made 200, let's increase it to 300. Let's increase it to 400. But I said, no, I want to make $1 million. I want to be a millionaire. And that would change my family's life. And that would make me go back to the police station and say, I'm successful and I'm leaving you. Because I needed that. So I did that. And approximately $980,000 was made by me that year before I quit policing. So I was $20,000 short. And I was shy, low self-esteem, bad student, had no business background, no real estate background, no networking background, nothing. I was the guy who wants to go to work, come home, take care of family, watch TV, eat a little bit, go to sleep, do the same thing. Just a regular guy. No high IQ, no high education, no special powers. other than what I did in policing, the street smarts and all that stuff. But there's nothing. It surprised me because if you had asked me up to that point, Sunil, there's a marriage, there's a reception. Can you go up there and dance by yourself? How about you get up on the stage and say 2 minutes, say something nice, say something inspiring for 30 seconds. I would melt to the ground. I would melt to the ground. So what happened was at the end of the year when that happened, I became this kind of icon. Like, how can this guy do this? Media, this and that. They started calling me TV. I remember first time the TV called me and said, we're calling from this TV and we want to talk to you. I'm like, I hung up on them because I didn't want to talk to anybody. And another person called me and said, we want your secret. And I, in my mind, like, well, I'm not giving anybody my secret. I'm not talking definitely to a media click. So I was like that because I was afraid to talk to anybody. Being a public speaker was something that probably wouldn't have happened in my mind in a million years. Being a best-selling author, I had a hard time writing an essay. It would be, anxiety for me to write an essay. I would do it. People told me your spelling is bad, your grammar is bad, your English grammar is this. You say a lot, you do you're not going to amount to anything. All of that changed when that success came. They didn't care if my grades were low. They didn't care if I didn't go to a certain school. All they wanted to know was, how did I do that, right? And they were pushing me to do things like become a public speaker. They were pushing me to become a coach. They're teaching. They go, oh, why don't you teach people? I said, who's going to teach? They go, you. I said, me? Are you kidding me? Me? I'm just a regular guy. What do you mean?
It started with that one seminar?
Yeah. And that seminar, a real estate seminar, is called Nothing Down. His name is Robert Allen, and I still give him my credit. He's now my buddy. He's my friend. I still see him as a mentor. All I had to do, he's coming to Mumbai. All I had to do is, he's in US. I called him up and said, Bob, there's this growth summit event happening in Mumbai. Would you mind coming? And just because of that relationship, the friendship, it's like, okay, let's do it. And this person, it took me 3, maybe 4 years, because I kept calling him, I kept not emailing him or calling his office number to say, I bought and sold 77 properties from your course. And I wanted to talk to him. I couldn't do it. But again, over the years, what I did was I wrote names of everyone that I studied, and I said, I'm going to do business with that person. Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki, Jack Canfield, Oprah Winfrey, whatever. I wrote all these names not knowing having any idea why, how am I going to do it? Brian Tracy, Jack, I was studying their books and I never knew. And I said, I'm going to do partnership with these people. They're going to know who Sunil Tulsiani is when they walk away. And 90% of it has come true in the 18 years. Not knowing how, when, no connections whatsoever, no strategy per se.
No stench of dead bodies.
Yeah. Oh.
But how? Was it the same core mentalities that got you success as an officer?
I think you don't have to be an officer. You don't have to be a detective. I don't think you have to do any of that to do that. There is a added benefit. And I would say the added benefit, one of the main added benefits is when somebody says, I want this, they're immediately hit by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of everything. What if it doesn't work out? I'm going to lose money. What do people say? People are going to laugh at me, blah, blah, blah. So the policing definitely got me to say, get out of my way. That's where I'm going. So either you move out of my way or I'll find a way to get there. Whereas the regular people a lot of times say, I promise you, I want to do this. I want to become big. I want to change the world. I want to make $1 million or whatever it is. And the next moment they'll say, not today, some other day. The biggest virus on the planet, 100 times worse than COVID for entrepreneurs are two. One, I'll do it some other day. I'll do it some other day. Two, I can't afford it. I can't afford it. And for me, when I come to a fear, I feel the fear, but then the difference is I do it. So that's the number one lesson is that, like, hey, if you're going to do something, you're going to say you want to do something, law of attraction is how you attract things into your life. Taking immediate action is how you get it. So you may attract the right person into your life today, but to do business with them, you have to take some action. You got to do something about it. Don't be sitting there, oh God, give me $1 million, give me $1 million, give me $1 million. Oh, there's $1 million. It doesn't work that way. But God might put you into a situation where you could make $1 million with that partnership or collaboration, right? But then as soon as that opportunity comes, what do? Do you back out? Do you say, I'll do it some other day? This is not a good time. So that's a big benefit that I had from policing, which is absolutely learnable. The learnable asset that you could have is to do the shit that you're scared of.
Where your fear is, there lies your task.
That's right. And be scared, but do it. And it'll be the best university. And even if you do it and you fail, that's better than not doing it and passing. Okay? And then that's basic. So a lot of people, so that's one. The other part was the negotiation aspect. See, in a real estate, if I go to you and say, how much is this house? And let's say dollars. We say this house or this property is $100,000. And I say, I'll buy it for 20% below market value. There's a negotiation aspect of it. So the funnel that requires to get there. Then finding the motivated seller who has to sell, not wants to sell. Then sitting with them and have the empathy for them, building relationship with them, and then showing them the benefit that they have by selling me the property at a discount. Okay, that is the turning point. Then once you have that property, then you say, okay, that's great, Sunil, but I got no money. I have zero money. I just committed to buying $100,000. So let's say you have no friends, you have no money, your credit is bad, you have a bad credit, you just got bankrupt yesterday. Okay. One of the ways that you would do that deal is that you would find a partner. Simple. Now, the biggest business show on TV all over the world is Shark Tank. Okay. So what happens in Shark Tank? You got sharks that are sitting there. You have somebody that comes up with an idea. The guy who comes up with an idea says, I have an idea. Could you invest all the money? In real estate, it's even better. In real estate, I come up with a plan and say, this house is worth $100,000. I got it for $80,000. I need $80,000 from you. And then I'll give you 50% of the profits. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this house. I'm going to invest $10,000. And when I invest $10,000, it's going to be worth $120,000. Okay? And within 6 months, you're going to get 30% ROI. So that is a starting point of collaboration. In real estate, they say joint venture partnerships, and all that. So that became my aha moment, that you need money. You don't need your money. You don't need your money.
To begin.
To even do it today.
Really?
Yes, because here's the thing. I've noticed, I was talking to Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he said he's $1.2 billion in debt. Yet he's one of the richest guys in the world. And let's say you have $1 million today. And let's say you need 20% down, and let's say you have good credit, and you can buy 5 properties. 20% down, 200,000, 5, to make it easy, because I know there's closing costs and all that stuff. But make it easy, you can buy 5. Or you can buy $1 million house, 1, by yourself. So that somebody's going to say, I'll buy $1 million cash. So now that house is theirs. Or somebody's going to say, I'll buy 5 of them using the same $1 million. But what if you want to be multimillionaire? This would then stop you right there. So what you're going to do is you go to somebody, let's say like me, an investor, and say, okay, I can find great deals. I can get you good returns, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What if I lend you like $10 million, which you didn't have? Okay. What if I lend you $100 million? So money is all about leverage. Business is about leverage. Business is about leverage. Right now we're doing this. This is leverage. We have wonderful people behind the scenes. That's a leverage.
Like an advantage, a weapon.
Yeah, it's a leverage, meaning you have, let's say instead of 2 hands, now you got 4 hands. We have a few people here. Now we have 10 hands. So if you wanted to lift, 10 buckets, you can take 2 buckets back and forth yourself. Yeah, at a time, let's say. But if you had 10 people, they would have taken it at the same time, and then they all get a little cut from it. That's what employment is actually, by the way. Your employees are your partners, really, who get a little cut from the profits that you make. So in business and real estate, people understand leverage because, okay, I want to buy this house. I'm going to put this much money, and then I'm going to go to the bank, and the bank's going to leverage the money to give me the loan, so then I can now live in that house. That's basically the leverage. Beyond that is, what if you don't need a bank? What if there are investors who have no time, but they have lots of money, and they hate working with, they invested enough money in stocks, mutual funds, and they're like, okay, we have several $1 million. And the beautiful thing about real estate is very simple. I can go to an investor and say, here's the property. Here's the picture. Here's the location. Here's the valuation in advance. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's who I am. And you take no risk or very little risk, because every business, everything has a risk. Whereas if you do what Shark Tank do, there's a big risk. It's an idea. If it sells, that's great. So learning the art of that, how to present an information package to an investor in a way that the investor himself says, wow, I want to put money into this. And what's the question? Number one thing is, how's my money safe? And your money is safe because you can put a lien on the property. So if I do anything wrong, you get a property that's worth more than what you're putting the money in. That's the essence of it.
How can people fail in this? I love this, by the way, because you did, like you explained it in detail, and this is sort of a version of what you did in that 1 year.
Correct. And there's more strategies that I used.
And you said there's an art of selling it to investors. I'm sure that's where the nuances are.
Correct. The first thing to understand is the investor is okay. You take the psychology of building a relationship. That's there. That has to be there. But at the end of the day, the way to grow is not to do what our parents have told us to do, which was don't talk to strangers. Everything we want, we have to talk to strangers. And once strangers become our friends, then it's easier to raise more money, simply. But let's say you have no friends and all like that. And how did I do that with that? So the investor package, for example, will consist of, let's say, a photo and the address, right? So I can go on the internet right now and say, where's this property? I can have somebody, my agent, look at it and say, yes, this is. Number 2, it will have, in Canada and the United States, it's very easy to get what we call is sold comps, sold comparables. So in that area, if we're in this building right now, if the apartment down below you was sold for a certain amount of money and is similar, let's say, in nature, then we know this apartment would be similar. So that's how we prove the value. Of course, we can always prove the value by a proper professional appraisal. Okay, just like the banks do. So now we got the photo address. Now we got the valuation. So then the investor is like, okay, it's worth $1 million. Then you have an agreement that says, I'm buying it for $800,000, which is 20% discount. You actually show the agreement. In the agreement, it says that I am allowed to either do partnership with my partner, or I'm allowed to assign the deal, assign the property to somebody else. An assignment is simply taking a contract, which happens in India as well, and you flip the contract. So if I bought it for 800,000, I sell it to you for 850 because it's still a good deal. Okay, you're making 150,000, I'm making $50,000. So that's a second. So first was joint venture partnership. Second is what we call it, assignment. Assignment basically means selling the contract that you have the right to. Okay, so in this case, when you are showing them, is there an assignment clause? When is the date, so they can see the agreement. Then you show that I'm buying it for this much, and then you show the numbers. Okay, numbers. I'm going to take this property. This property requires $50,000 of upgrades. Okay, so I bought it for $800,000. It requires $50,000 upgrade, and when I upgrade it, ARV, after repair value, can be $1.1 million. Why? Because when I upgrade the property, maybe the washrooms are going to be a little bit better. The kitchen will have a better countertop. Maybe I'll paint the whole place. Maybe make it look like really nice. And when maybe the flooring can change, carpets can change. So we do things that doesn't require us a lot of money, but it elevates the value of the property. Okay? So once we do that, so we show the investor that this is what I'm going to be doing. The next thing I show them is that I will be doing 99% of the work. You will be sitting home if you want to, or you can show up anytime you want. Don't have to do any work. So doctors, engineers, professionals, people with money, they're like, I'm too busy for this, but I love making 20, 30%. Okay. So now investor package doesn't say, here's the property, I'm putting no money, and I'm taking half. That's one way of saying it. The way to say it is, here's the property. I've invested so much time, energy to get this property and negotiate a good deal. Once I've negotiated a good deal, then I'm going to oversee all the work, and then I'm going to flip it for this price. And look, let me show you the pro forma, the business numbers. At the end, we're going to make this much money, okay? And I'm going to make $200,000 on this. Of the $200,000, you will make $100,000, which means your ROI is this much without doing any work. And I cannot run away with your property.
And there's a version of this business model in every country.
That's right. Every country that allows buying and selling of real estate. Because there are countries that you cannot legally own properties.
Like North Korea?
Could be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe in Russia and some other places. And up to a certain point, even it used to be in UAE before and all that stuff. And there's some places there's leasehold properties versus you actually owning it. So it may not work with that one with the leasehold. Then maybe sometimes you have to be the resident of the countries and all that. But I would say 90% of the planet, you should be able to do this because it works everywhere. And the proof is Shark Tank India, which was obviously my friend, Kevin Harrington, who is a billionaire from Shark Tank in US. He was talking about how they started with small thing, and then the Shark Tank itself exploded. Now, when I was talking to Aman Gupta, he said they never thought Shark Tank India would be as big as it is. What that means is that this stuff works. So instead of having an idea and money, combine it together, beautiful deal. So the biggest point here is this: what would you do, say, how would you act, what kind of confidence would you have when you were walking around with $10 million in your pocket when you have no money? What would you do? So I teach people, walk into the room if you have $10 million, if you have no money. And walk in there knowing somebody has your $10 million. If you have a good deal.
Effectively, you're teaching them to be a part of the team,
Yes.
but you're also teaching them how to be that best ever hustling teammate.
Of course.
And then the art of hustling in the domain of making money from real estate is what they learn from you.
Correct.
And you've given a very kind of broad gist of it right now.
Yes.
And I know that in order to deep dive, we're going to have to probably do another 3-hour podcast with you.
Start with my books.
Yeah, fair.
Start with my
Very
books.
cool. Very cool. We've not had too many guests on the show as honest as you.
Thank you.
That's what I'll say, sir.
Thank you.
And man, while this was one like roller coaster of a podcast, I'm blown away.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'd still honestly, at least from my eyes, because I do so many of these, I get to the core of
Yes.
who I'm speaking with.
Yes.
I think there are these constant values that you've carried with you throughout your life. A lot of it is related to visualization and law of attraction, but you have these certain disciplines inside you already.
Correct.
I think the internet can actually teach that core to a lot of people. That's my big hope, especially in our country, in India. We're at that brink where we need it. I'm sure this is going to go out to other countries as well, but
Of course.
my primary audience is Indian.
Oh, believe me, this is going to go to US and Canada because I'll make
Really?
sure. Yes.
I appreciate that. I think, I don't know when I mentioned this to you, whether it was in a conversation or it was with Sneh yesterday. I said that we're living in a country right now, which is a combination of many countries.
Yes.
As urban Indians, you almost feel more American or Canadian than you feel Indian.
Yes.
In some cases.
Sure.
But in the interiors of the country, people have suddenly got technology. Their parents didn't have televisions and now they have cell phones in their hands.
That's right.
And they do watch the English podcast in an aspirational way. Their thought process is, hey, I can't speak the language, but let me listen in order to improve my English and give my family a better life. And the fact that they're getting access to content like this through people like you, who probably grew up in a very different India and then moved abroad, learned international thinking, then now you're bringing it back here.
Yes.
So I don't need to say this, sir, but you are giving back to the country
Thank you.
as well.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Often with like great podcasts, I feel guilty at the end because I always feel I've not done justice to the guest.
No, you did good.
But thank you. You gave me a lot to think about. I've learned a crazy amount about like mindset from this one. Though we spoke about crime and like real
Yes,
estate,
yes.
what tied the two together was mindset. And you have had two different lives, like
Oh, yes.
very starkly different lives. I am looking forward to learning from you more in life. That's all I'll say, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here.
No, for sure. I think it's the first of many conversations with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was the conversation for today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you want more gritty conversations like this, we've got a bunch of them uploaded already on TRS. What I will say about Sunil sir is that even through this conversation, I've not done justice to his entire life story. It was more about his time spent as a detective, as a police officer. But I sincerely hope that you gain what I wish you gained from this episode at the time of recording, which is the right kind of human values that it takes to accomplish whatever you wish to accomplish in life. One of the most hatke or different lives has been lived by Sunil Tulsiani, sir. And he's definitely going to be back on TRS. Show him all your love, show him all your support. And Ranveer and the team will be back very soon.